I'm here with Cherry of Defenses to talk about their upcoming new record, Shadow Light, out November 8th on Long Branch Records. First of all, thank you very much for taking the time today.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about this album. When you look at the record now, and you've probably had some time to digest the work and the process that went into it, is there a thread? Is there a common thread that connects all of these songs together?
When you say a common thread, do you mean in terms of like the themes?
More so thematically than sonically.
So yeah, thematically, the theme is all around introspection, really. It's about looking at a kind of both sides of yourself and really shedding a light on the things that you would otherwise kind of repress or discard, trauma, any kind of, negative self-talk, all that kind of stuff. And really kind of understanding why they are a part of you and how they are a part of you and ultimately kind of leading to acceptance, which is the other kind of main theme of the album. And it kind of all is tied around this dark and light visualization and is characterized by the Shadow Cherry character, which is the kind of all, dark black eyes character that I've created for the cycle.
So when you get to the end of this, do you now look back at yourself from your own personal journey? Do you feel like you're maybe not better as a person, but you understand yourself better as a person?
Yeah, I definitely do. And the biggest thing about this in kind of all of my research about it is that it is an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing journey that we kind of go on, for the majority of our lives. But yeah, definitely since I've started kind of doing this and taking the time to kind of really get to know myself and understand how I've gotten to the point that I'm at in my life. Yeah, I definitely feel like I'm being kinder to myself and I'm taking the time to kind of sit in situations and understand them from different perspectives. And it's affected my life in, pretty much every way.
So from a philosophical standpoint, do you think we as humans, are we complicated or do we complicate things?
We are complicated. We're incredibly complicated. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about humans. Obviously we've kind of evolved to be one of the most intelligent like species, and we have this incredible world that we've created. But we are these incredibly complex, especially emotionally, creatures, and it's kind of insane everything that we kind of have to deal with and navigate through our human lives.
Being in the band and making music, does that minimize that sense of being a complicated being? Does that give you at least an outlet for you to exercise some of those muscles?
Yeah, it definitely does. And for me personally, I've always been a creative person and I've always kind of been drawn to creativity as an outlet. So from quite early on, I kind of discovered that music was that outlet for me. And so it does kind of feel like, without being too cliche about it, it is what I'm supposed to be doing. So it is quite fulfilling.
Every album, I feel like this applies to every band. Every album is always a snapshot of where the band is at that specific time when they created the record. Obviously, from a thematic standpoint, it's always easier to see it. But when it comes to the sound of the band, do you guys look at not just taking a snapshot of where you are, but perhaps putting in some elements that allows for growth going into future records?
Absolutely, especially with this one, we experimented a lot and we were really trying to modernize our sound. We really wanted to try some kind of, different and futuristic vibes to some of these songs. So yeah, that's definitely something that was kind of thought about as part of the process. The biggest thing kind of thematically slash sonically when it comes to the music, the instrumental, it does still kind of tie back to the original kind of concept and idea that we had for it. Callum's said he's mentioned that essentially the whole kind of scary horror darker vibe that the songs have and the riffs have, and that was inspired by the character essentially that I kind of created, because that essentially came first. Like we had a few demos we were working on, but before we'd kind of had any real discussion about what the album would be. I kind of came up with this character and then started to explore these themes and kind of think about how we could make it into something.
So is the creativity behind a record the result of the collective, or is there the force is a little bit stronger with some of the individualities?
Um, well, it's a bit of both, to be honest. Like most songs do start with Callum having an instrumental idea that he'll kind of develop either on his own or Kyle, the drummer, will kind of help him from a production standpoint. And then when they've gotten to a point where they're kind of happy with an initial idea in a demo, they'll send it to me to get some vocal ideas down. And then once we have those initial vocal ideas, then we kind of all workshop together, and then it becomes a much more collaborative process, basically from then until kind of signing off on a song.
Vocally, how was this record for you? Like, was there challenges for you? Do you see growth from previous work coming into this album? How was the whole experience?
I definitely do. And I recently listened back to our first album just because I wanted to kind of see if I could hear the differences and what's kind of changed and evolved in my vocals. And I can definitely hear it. I think there's some of it that just comes from, aging and playing shows and touring and stuff. But I can definitely hear that there's a my voice has grown stronger, and so I have challenged myself to push that even further on this record in terms of, just some of the kind of belting that I'm doing on some of these songs and the notes that I'm hitting. And then as well as that, I basically was so inspired over the years that we were writing the album by so many incredible bands with so many amazing women that have, these incredible screams. And, I spent years thinking that that wasn't something that I could do, but being so inspired, I kind of just decided to try it, and it ended up being a really cool part of one of my favorite songs on the album.
Are you your very own worst critic?
100%. Aren't we all?
I think we are. If there's somebody that's dragging us down more often than not is ourselves.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
if you really analyze it, we tend to always point the finger and blame other people for our very own shortcomings. But I think if you're really truthful to yourself, your shortcomings are normally a result of something that you could have changed or impacted.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you
So
don't
how do
know.
you deal with it, knowing that you are your own worst critic? How do you how do you put these things in different boxes, like the critic side of you and the side of you that wants to develop and do new things?
that side that side will always come back stronger. Like sometimes the self-critic can be louder in me, 100%. I'm sure it's the same for everyone. But the other side is so persistent and has been since I was, such a young girl that it always comes back. And that combined with essentially the positive feedback that I get from people, from friends and from my bandmates and from all of the people that listen to our music and are constantly telling us how much they love our music and love, the lyrics that I've written and love my voice. I force myself to listen to that rather than what I'm telling myself.
It could be a challenge. I'm sure it can be a challenge. When you were mentioning about pushing yourself and doing some things because you're inspired to do them and you didn't think you could, did you look at getting help in order to take you to that next level, or everything is pretty much self-taught?
So from a screaming perspective, it is all self-taught. I did get some help in terms of strengthening and making sure that my techniques were correct before our first album. I actually worked with Kim Chandler, who's worked with Ollie Sykes and a couple of other people who have gone out my head right now, but yeah, very renowned vocal coach. And yeah, she kind of helped me get the techniques down. And then essentially, when I was doing my research into screaming, a lot of what I was seeing was saying that if you have that foundation already as a singer, it is a lot easier to go down the screaming route, and that helped with my confidence of trying it. And then yeah, I essentially just followed some YouTube tutorials until I found a sound that didn't sound awful.
would think YouTube. I want to learn how to do this. Let me check out YouTube.
There's so
I do
many
this.
videos.
Everybody does that these days. Like the other day, I had a noise in my car. I went on YouTube to figure out what the noise was. So, there is some good things about social media and the internet world. This being definitely one of them. When you look at this record, specifically at this album, and you look at the lyrical content of the record, are you someone who writes the lyrics with the songs in mind, or some pieces of these songs are part of what you write on a everyday basis almost?
It chops and changes. It varies 100%. Not so much over the last year because of just how busy I've been, but generally I'm just always writing lyrics. And so, sorry, I'll have notes on my phone that are just full of lyric ideas. So when it comes time to look at lyrics for a song, when we get, sent instrumental demos, I will, as a starting point, I will just listen to the song. And if anything comes to me, then I'll make notes of it and work from there. But if that doesn't happen straight away, then I'll just go through that notes app and see if there are any ideas that I've come up with that fit the vibe of the instrumental that we've been sent essentially. Um, and kind of go from there. So it does chop and change, and I do have the songs in mind, but it's not always a case of writing lyrics specifically for that song. Sometimes I'm fitting the song to a lyrical idea that I've already come up with.
Your growth as a singer in the studio, does most of it come from the work that you do in the studio, or some of it comes from the experiences of performing live and seeing what works best in the long run?
Most of it is done in the studio, to be honest, and then when it gets to the live bit, that's more of like a surprise or a challenge, depending on what it is. But yeah, no, most of it comes from literally, yeah, playing demos over and over and over on a loop until I have these ideas form in my head, and then I record them somehow, and then I take them into the studio and try and make them work, until I think I found what it's supposed to be. Um, and then it might get workshopped a little bit more from there. But yeah, um, I don't generally kind of think about ways to do things differently based on the live experience. Um, Not in terms of like writing anyway. I do like to tweak the songs that we're playing live so that they're a bit more special. So I'll maybe do a slightly different melody line or, do a slightly different kind of vocal rhythm just to mix it up. And it isn't a case of people are hearing exactly what they would hear on the record when it's live. But yeah, that's probably the extent of it.
But you want, I mean, if I wanted to hear exactly what you guys did in the studio live, then I just listen to the record. You need to
Exactly.
you need to bring a little bit flair. Like you need to change something. That's what's going to make that performance unique in itself.
Exactly. Yeah.
At
Yeah.
least that's my take. You mentioned some of the influences of that you've had of strong females, fronting bands, and I want to ask you this because maybe my perception is wrong, and that's why I'm going to ask you this question. I have a feeling like about 10 years ago, when people refer to a female fronted band, there was a positive connotation to it. But I feel like now, when people refer to a band as female fronted, there is nothing positive about that statement whatsoever. It's almost taken with a certain degree of disrespect to a certain level. Do you see that term evolving, changing, or to you it still means the same?
No, I definitely do see it changing. I mean, even from when we first started, we called ourselves a female fronted band, but we wouldn't call ourselves that now, really, necessarily. And it is just with, how society is changing generally and how we're kind of trying to move towards a kind of more just equal approach in our thinking in general with everything. So it's less about the fact that it's female fronted and it's just another band kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't necessarily come across any kind of like strongly negative, connotations with it. Um, it does just seem to be there's no reason to get that. There's no reason to kind of call that out as something about the band.
Yeah, it almost started, in my opinion, it almost started almost as a marketing tool by the labels
Hmm.
to kind of sell the band.
Yeah, because there were very, very few uh,
yeah,
females in bands.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But now I feel like when people use that term, it just doesn't make as much sense anymore. I mean, it doesn't really matter who the person singing is.
Exactly.
It's about the quality of the music. Is it good or is it bad? Not necessarily who the person is. So I just find it strange that something that perhaps had a positive spin 10 years, man, we've come a long way. We are complicated people.
Exactly.
You know, like you take a nap and you wake up and the world around you has changed, and not everybody deals well with change. But I want to ask you about some of those female influences. Who are some of the ones that influence you the most?
Oh, there's so many. The biggest one, the first one that comes to mind for me is definitely Courtney LaPlante from Spirit Box. I discovered them fairly early on in their career, and I was just blown away by her talent, um, and that definitely transcended into live as well. Just the energy and the presence that she has on stage is yeah, it's incredible. Ginger is another one, such a strong scream. I am in awe of everything that she does live, especially as well. And then we have a few friends in bands that I've actually found quite inspiring. So Charlie from As Everything Unfolds, they're actually on Long Branch not long ago. Vexed, Megan from Vexed,
Megan, yeah.
incredible band.
I've had them both on the channel. They're
Nice.
great. I love them. I think they're phenomenal.
They're lovely, lovely girls, and yeah, they're so good at what they do. Both incredible screams, and very different, but yeah, really cool. Future Palace as well. Recently met them at the Heavy Music Awards. They're incredible and doing amazing things. Um, and oh, there was one other that I wanted to mention, but it's actually just completely gone from my head, so I'll leave it there. But there
If
are
you think of
so
it, you can always
many.
bring it back up. You mentioned As Everything Unfolds and Vex, two bands from the UK, as you guys are. I feel like there's such a healthy metal scene, especially with young bands in the UK, regardless of who's singing, female or male, it doesn't matter. There's so many great bands coming out of the UK. How do you guys try to carve your own little space? Because it feels like the island is crowded.
It is for sure it is. And yeah, everyone's kind of trying to make a bit of a name for themselves and yeah, find their slice. For us, it's a it's a difficult one for me to talk about because basically what it has kind of come around to is that the thing that really makes us unique and special is me. That's what I've been told. That isn't me saying this. That's what I've been told. My voice is pretty, it's a pretty unique voice in general, let alone for a voice that you would find in kind of metal music. Um, and so that's something that we basically kind of really leaned into for this album and this cycle is my voice and the different kind of things that it can do, and then obviously with the character, the Shadow Cherry character, it is kind of all kind of revolved around that. So from like a visual perspective, from a lyrical perspective, it has all kind of come from me. From a musical perspective,
No
coming
pressure, by the way. I mean, everything is on you, no pressure. The rest of the guys are like, hey, you know what? Like if the boat sinks, it's on you.
Um, no, it's definitely not all on me. Yeah, the thing about our band that is really cool is that we all have pretty different and pretty eclectic music tastes, and so that really makes for interesting music writing, I feel. And so, I think that our music is quite different just by that nature to, some of the other metalcore that you'll get out there because you'll find some slightly weirder, jazzier, things going on that you might not find in other bands.
Uh, with that scene in the UK being so alive, is the reason why is it so alive because there is a sense of friendship between the bands and you guys are all collaborating in order to make that scene alive and well? Because I don't think you could have that sort of growth of music and diversity within that music if everybody was trying to undermine one another and trying to climb that ladder.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's all friends and family essentially. Um, yeah, well, over the last few years, we've done a couple UK tours where I've had the opportunity to, spend some time with some other UK bands, and yeah, everyone is just really rooting for everyone else. Everyone is willing to offer advice and share contacts and um, yeah, we are all kind of trying to make a name for ourselves, but it does feel like, it is a family joint effort because we want the scene to be alive and well in the UK, and it hasn't always been. So yeah, everyone's kind of chipped into it together.
And I think if one of you guys breaks the door down and moves through that door, then the door stays open for all the other ones to come
Yeah.
behind it and just make it through.
Which is exactly what I feel has happened. Like I feel like in terms of like the latest, I don't know, generation or whatever of bands in the UK, you had bands like Loathe and Holding Absence who just absolutely blew up, and then Caskets closely followed, and
Mhm.
um, all the bands that are kind of making waves in the scene now are either friends of those bands or friends of those bands, and it is all kind of this connected hub um, that has been able to grow and progress based on some successes of some incredible UK bands.
And based on the success that this album is going to have once it reaches the audience on November 8th on Long Branch Records, what are your plans for 2025?
Tour. Our plans is just to get out there and play as many shows as possible, touring this album. We are already working on a couple of new songs, so there will be, a couple. We'll probably put out a few new singles over the course of next year, but generally we just want to play as many shows as possible. Um, we didn't get to tour our second album as much as we would have liked to because it was around the time that everything was just coming out of, COVID and everything. So yeah, we really wanted to just get out there and play as many shows as possible for this album.
Well, I hope 2025 brings you everything that you want,
Thank
brings you
you.
touring, less coughing for you and me. I hope that everything comes your way. You guys are a phenomenal band. Thank you for taking the time and thank you for being part of such an active and creative UK metal scene.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. It's been cool to
Oh,
talk to you.
my pleasure. Take care. All the best.
Take care. Bye bye.